Hi, and welcome to part one of our basic training on thriving in 5 dimensions. 5D Thrive is an approach to human anti-fragility, to flourishing in Jesus, that kind of has its roots in our own experience and our colleagues' experience, living in difficult places for a long period of time, trying to do good things sort of against the current. When we first architected and built out this approach, we had a combined, 40 or 50 years living in dicey places. One of the things that we noticed to our deep sadness was how frequently people who came committed to stay for a long time actually left after 1 or 2 or 3 years. It wasn't because their commitment was weak or they were disinterested or lacked love. It's because they were overcome by events. It's because they were beaten up or ground up by the caustic nature of the environments that they lived in. So we began to ask the question, what could we teach our people to do with themselves and with their teammates or with their close community that would decrease the likelihood of attrition and increase the vibrancy that they brought to their task? Out of those questions, 5D Thrive was born. 5D Thrive is a community approach to intentional self-care and development toward strategic human flourishing in Jesus, Christian anti-fragility. It's not just human flourishing, it's strategic human flourishing in Jesus. We believe that it's possible to become attentive to the ways Jesus comes to us through these different dimensions of our personalities and intentional about how we join him there toward our own thriving. An anti-fragile system is a system that consumes chaos, it consumes stress, it can receive difficulty and become more for it. We believe one of the most strategic actions we can make on any given day is increase the vibrancy of the people that we have in play in hard places. If we can help you become much brighter, you can live longer in the dark and change that place. So let's start with the biblical context. When I say the word soul, what do you think of? Most people think of the disembodied, ghostly piece of them, the part that is inside the shell, the ghost in the machine. But that is really exactly the opposite of what the biblical writers meant when they used the word nephesh in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, nephesh is the word that's translated soul, and it refers to the integrated, embodied human being. It's so much not the ghostly part of you that animals are called nepheshes, and dead people or dead animals are called dead nepheshes. If anything, your body is almost the most important part of your nephesh, of your soul. A soul is an integrated organism with multiple facets or dimensions. So in that regard, you don't have a soul, you are a soul. You see this in passages like Psalm 103, verse 1. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. So this is a couplet in Hebrew poetry. The first line and the second line speak to one another. This particular couplet is actually a chiasm, where the content goes A, B, B, A. So bless the Lord, O my soul, all that is within me, bless his holy name. So bless the Lord and bless his holy name pair, and all that is within me is equal to my soul. My soul is everything I am. This understanding of soul is what's in the psalmist's mind in 138 when he says, on the day I called, you answered me. My strength of soul you increased. You made all of me strong enough for the scenario that I was in. You brought vitality to the whole system. And indeed, the care that God provides, that the Lord provides to the speaker in Psalm 23 is holistic. It's got green grass and still waters, protection both from danger and the anxiety that comes from that danger, overflowing cups, hospitality in the midst of enemies. Everything about your being shows up in that psalm somewhere, and it's you that he restores. He restores your restored souls in broken places lead to the restoration of those places. So here's how we teach people to think about their souls. We talk about your soul like it has 5 dimensions: the spiritual, the physical, the cognitive, the emotional, and the relational. Let me quickly introduce those, in particular in regard to this diagram. So the spiritual is in the center because your spirituality, your direct connection to God as spirit, is the sun in the solar system. It provides the gravity and the life and the energy for the whole system to work. It's the hub of the wheel where the power comes from. All the torque for a Godward life and a God-expressing life comes from this dimension. The next three pieces form a triad. The physical is on the bottom, not because it is the least important, but because, in fact, it's kind of super duper important. Your physicality, your physical body, is the operating platform on which the rest of you works. Spiritual disciplines are practices that you engage with your body. Your thoughts and your emotions happen in a brain, which is a physical part of your physical body and is connected to the rest of your body, and its functions, in fact, rely on the health of your body to actually work properly. Your physicality is super important, and that's why it's on the bottom, because it kind of holds the rest of it up. Your cognitive self is the thinking you. When we talk about cognitive health, we talk about how clearly you think, what you think about. It's your thought life, and it's to be paired with your emotional life. And we put them on the left and right as kind of a nod to the oversimplification of the left-brained and right-brained ways of thinking, the logical and the emotional. So you have your spirituality, your physicality, your cognitive self, and your emotional self. But then you also have the fact that you are a relational being. And this is sort of the part that our friends in communal contexts get much more quickly than our friends from individualist contexts. Your relationships are how the world comes to you. You experience the world through your relationships, and your relationships are how the world experiences you. Relational is the hub of the wheel, not because it's ancillary or unimportant, but it's because that's where the rubber meets the road. So with those 5 dimensions in mind, let's talk about the thriving piece. An organism thrives when it metabolizes its environment, when it eats its environment and does the chemistry on the inside to make that into more growth or fruit. Your environment includes both blessings and desolations. It includes both nutrients and stressors. If you plant a sapling in the ground and put a stake next to it so that it doesn't blow down, that's really useful for that sapling. But if you don't take that stake out pretty soon, that sapling will never experience the force of wind. And because of that, it will never create dense enough wood to hold up fruiting branches. The life of that tree is absolutely dependent upon whether or not it experiences enough stress. Not too much, but enough. So we learn to thrive when we bring those 5 dimensions of ourselves to the question of how can I get the nutrients that I need in the place that I'm in, and how can I turn the stress that I'm under into greater strength or fruit. Now, the 2 places we actually engage the 5DThrive approach are the monthly vector checks, where you guessed it, every month, you check in on your 5 dimensions, and a Thrive plan that you revisit quarterly, a plan that you build in order to secure thriving in all 5 of those dimensions, a plan you build and execute and which you check on quarterly. In this video, we're going to explore the vector checks. In the next video, we'll talk about the plan. So the 5D vector check is a simple diagnostic tool to help you check in with how you're feeling in all 5 dimensions to make sure that no single dimension is neglected. Based on our families of origin and our communities of origin, and maybe even our spiritual communities of origin where we grew up in the Jesus way, we are more or less skilled with different dimensions. Usually there's 1 or 2 dimensions that a person is really good at taking care of, and then 1 or 2 that a person really has no idea how to invest in. The vector checks help you check monthly how you're feeling about where things are going. These are not performance checks. You're not getting graded. You're not grading yourself. You're not trying to see how am I doing. You're trying to notice how am I feeling. You're not measuring, you're just attending. So here's how we do it. You get a piece of paper, a napkin, a receipt, a page in your journal, and you draw 5 parallel lines where the left side is lower than the right. This will be important in a moment. Go ahead and take a second and do that right now. Pause the video and draw your lines. All right, then to the left of those lines, you label them spiritual, physical, cognitive, emotional, and relational. You can also just label it with the first letter of those words. And then 1/3 of the way and 2/3 of the way up each line, put a hash right through those lines to break each line into 3 equal pieces. The bottom third of each dimension is sick, and the middle third of each dimension is well, and the top third is fit. The hash marks represent the sort of borderlands between sickness and wellness and fitness. When a dimension is well, you don't really notice it. It's not humming, it's not vibrating with raw power, but it's also not impaired. So that bottom line, that hash between sick and well, that's impairment. When that particular dimension is feeling badly enough that it's impairing your ability to concentrate, feel happy, or do your work. That is impairment. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's stopping you completely. It's getting in the way. Similarly, the line between wellness and fitness is pull. When a particular dimension is so healthy that it's beginning to pull the other dimensions up, or it's beginning to catalyze thrive in another person. If it's pulling them toward wellness, toward fitness, then that dimension's fit. Fitness in any dimension tends to pull the other dimensions up. Sickness in any dimension tends to mess the other dimensions up. So given that you have these 5 dimensions and given what they mean, take a moment now and draw a circle on each of the dimensions that represents how you're feeling right now today. When I did this vector check months ago, I was feeling spiritually well, physically well. I wasn't feeling fit. Cognitively, I was on the low side of well, and emotionally, I was sick. This doesn't mean that I was mentally ill. This just means that my emotions were noisy enough that they were beginning to impair my ability to concentrate. I was having strong feelings about a particularly difficult situation. Sadness, anger, fear, these are not indications of emotional sickness. When you don't feel emotions that are appropriate to the situation you're in, that's emotional sickness. Or when your emotions flood you and you're having feelings that are more powerful than the situation calls for or can explain, that suggests emotional sickness. But again, these aren't moral categories. You're not better for being fit or worse for being sick. It's just, that's how you're feeling right now. That's how you're feeling this month. My emotions were impairing my ability to concentrate. And then relationally, I was feeling well. Nothing was really fit. The month before, a couple of those dimensions had been feeling fit, but the emotional noise from this particular situation had a dragging effect on all of me. But where the circles land isn't the most important part. The most important part comes from my friend Paul, the doctor. When Dr. Paul checks in with someone after he's seen them to see if the treatment plan is working, I will often hear him say, "It sounds like things are going in the right direction." Or if they're not, he'll say, "Wow, that's going the wrong way." What's most important isn't how you're feeling in each dimension. What's most important is which way each dimension is moving. So take a moment now and draw an arrow over each circle that represents which direction this dimension has been moving for you in the last 30 days. Look back now, not just right now today, but look back across the last month and ask yourself, which way has this been moving? Has it been going up toward fitness or down toward sickness? You may want to pause the video and do that now. In my case, each of my dimensions were actually moving up when I did the vector check. Remember that the word vector suggests direction and magnitude. Which way is this going and how fast? That's what we're asking. We're trying each month to get a snapshot, not of where we are, but of where we are going. And we can extrapolate where we're going based on where we've come from in the last 30 days. Now, after I do this with someone on a call or sitting down over coffee, I will typically ask 3 questions. The first one, which of these would you like to talk about? I may notice that one of those vectors I really want to talk about, but what's most important is the one they're most concerned about. And remember that when we're checking our spiritual dimension, we're not drawing a circle or making an arrow that reflects how we are inhabiting our spiritual practices. We're drawing a circle or drawing an arrow reflecting how vividly are we encountering Jesus in our lives. So the first question I'll ask is, which would you most like to talk about? And once we've talked about that, I may still have questions about another dimension too, but we want to pay attention to what you're noticing. The second question we'll ask is, how can I help you? When it comes to thriving, the 2 kinds of help that we're most likely to be able to give are catalyzing, or capacity development, capacitation. Maybe we can add some energy to the system to help you move something that's stuck. Maybe we can encourage you on something that you're just a little discouraged about. Or maybe we can say, hey, you haven't been taking care of yourself for 3 months and it's really time to do that. But it may be that you don't know how to take care of a particular dimension of your personality. It could be that you grew up in a not very emotionally intelligent home or in a not very emotionally intelligent theological system. And so you notice that you can't feel your feelings, but you don't know how to find them, right? So the help that we might be able to provide here is helping you notice and name your emotions. In each of these dimensions, there's help that we can give you, and we want to know, how can we help you? And then finally, we'll ask about where Jesus has been active or where you would love to see Jesus active. Which part of your soul would you most like to see restored in the coming month? Or in the last month, where have you seen Jesus most vividly meet you? In which of these dimensions have you seen Jesus come to you? These three questions will always follow a vector check, and it's good to be ready for that. So congratulations, you have done your first vector check. In our next video, we'll talk about how to make a plan to thrive. It's really, really good to pay attention to your soul. The reasons most people burn up or burn out in challenging contexts, cross-cultural assignments, difficult jobs, rough teams, is usually because the damage is being accrued in some part of their soul that they don't know how to look at, or they just haven't been taught to look at, or they're just not checking in frequently enough to know. Once you gain some facility in checking in with yourself or helping the people around you check in with themselves, the next question that naturally emerges is, if I've got a dimension going downhill, or if I've got a dimension that's just hovering, or if I want to move a dimension up, and that's really what we want to do. We want to be the fittest possible versions of ourselves that we can be in sick contexts, knowing that health is contagious, that wholeness is contagious, and that it's the glory inside you because you bear the image of God and you house the express image of the Father in Jesus. You want that glory to leak out all five of these dimensions, and it does that best when those dimensions thrive. Knowing that, the next reasonable question is, how can I increase the thrive in each of these dimensions? How can I bring more vitality, vividness, vibrancy to each dimension? And to do that, you'll need a plan and you'll need to work it. And that's what we'll talk about next time.